Morbid Facts, Part 337. This was the last photo ever taken of Brooklyn freediver Nicholas Mavoli after attempting to set the American record for freediving at 236 feet deep. He completed the dive and resurfaced, gave the OK sign, attempted to speak, and then passed out. He never regained consciousness and died later that day from pulmonary edema. Dr. Joseph Guillotin was against executions but knew they would happen regardless. So he popularized the guillotine to make executions as quick and painless as possible. Unfortunately, it wasn't as humane as he'd thought, since it was later discovered that the human head can remain conscious for up to 20 seconds after being decapitated. This is a photo of Lyndon B. Johnson being sworn in as president just 2 hours after JFK was assassinated. George Wallace was a governor of Alabama who openly supported Jim Crow and segregation. Once his term was over, he helped get his wife elected so that he could subvert his term limit and stay in office. To do so, he kept her cancer diagnosis a secret from her, knowing that the treatment would negatively affect her ability to run. Thus, the first female governor of Alabama died within 200 days of her term. Dewey the cat died in 1910, but meant enough to his owner to be honored with a gravestone that still stands 113 years later. It reads, "He was only a cat, but he was human enough to be a great comfort in hours of loneliness and pain." In 1950, herpetologist Kevin Budden caught a deadly taipan snake by hand and hitchhiked to town while holding it. At some point, he lost his grip and was bitten, but managed to bag the snake and made a random truck driver promise to get it to researchers. Kevin succumbed to the venom the next day, but the driver kept his promise, and the snake was used to create the first taipan antivenom in history. In 1991, actor Phil Lewis, who played Mr. Mosby on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, collided head-on with another car in Maryland while driving drunk. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison for vehicular manslaughter when the 21-year-old woman he collided with died. Momcilo Gavrich of the Serbian army was the youngest soldier to have fought in World War I. He was able to join at the age of 7 after his whole family was killed by Austro-Hungarian soldiers. Mary and Margaret Gibb were a famous pair of conjoined twins who traveled with Barnum and Bailey in the 1930s. In 1966, it was discovered that Margaret had bladder cancer, but the two adamantly refused to be separated. The next year, Margaret died and Mary followed 2 minutes later, both at the age of 55. In 2021, Corinna Smith discovered that her husband had sexually assaulted her children when they were younger. In response, she filled a bucket with boiling sugar water and dumped it on him while he was asleep, leading to his incredibly painful death. Florida puppeteer Ronald Brown was the host of a kids' TV show in the 1980s called Joy Junction on the Christian Network. But he was later found to be a child predator who had tons of CP and often fantasized in online chat rooms about kidnapping, torturing, murdering, and cannibalizing children. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison in 2012. A UK woman who was taking a nap with her mouth open ended up in the hospital for 3 days after her daughter's dog dropped a deuce in her mouth. This is what a rabies patient looks like when they've already developed symptoms. Rabies causes hydrophobia, where attempting to drink or even just looking at water causes intense clenching throat spasms. This is why rabid animals are often seen foaming at the mouth. Sadly, once a patient reaches this point, there's a 99.9% chance that they will die. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a brother named Maynard who was favored by their Nazi father but died in a drunk driving crash when he was 24. Arnold didn't attend his brother's funeral or his father's. In 1980, a Las Vegas hospital had to suspend workers for betting on when patients would die. One nurse was even accused of murdering a patient so she would win. The extremely venomous blue-ringed octopus has enough venom to kill 10 grown adults. Its deadly neurotoxin can result in patients being fully aware of their surroundings but unable to move. Because of the paralysis, you have no way of signaling for help or indicating distress. There's no anti-venom for the bite, but if you can get a ventilator to breathe for you for 16 hours, you will survive with no side effects. In 2012, the cruise ship Costa Concordia collided with a rock off the coast of Italy, resulting in 32 deaths. When asked why he abandoned the ship while his passengers were either dying or trying to escape, the captain's excuse was that he fell into a lifeboat. He received 16 years in prison for his role in the tragedy. In September of 2021, 3-year-old Sutton Mosser was stabbed to death by her mother. The 23-year-old woman claimed that the cartoon character SpongeBob told her to do it. During Hurricane Camille in 1969, the rainfall was so heavy in Virginia that birds were drowning in trees. The storm dumped 28 inches of rain over a 5-hour span and took the lives of over 100 people. After his wife died during a long route to the hospital, Dashrath Manji devoted his life to making the route shorter. He spent 22 years carving a 300-foot path through a mountain using only a hammer and chisel, and managed to shorten the journey from 34 miles to 9. 17-year-old Lisa Noland planned on ending her life just before she was abducted by serial killer Bobby Joe Long. He raped her several times and held her hostage for 26 hours until she managed to escape. Lisa got the man captured, as the traumatic experience gave her a new lease on life and inspired her to become a cop. South Korean actor Jo Son is known for playing Random Task in the first Austin Powers movie. But in 2008, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for torturing and essaying a female victim on Christmas Day. 3 years later, 27 years were added onto his sentence after he murdered his cellmate. In 2019, Florida man Grant Amato murdered his mother, father, and brother and tried to stage it as a murder-suicide committed by his brother. But police didn't buy his story when they found out his parents were threatening to kick him out of their house over his severe porn addiction. He had stolen over $200,000 from them and spent it all on a cam model from Bulgaria. In 1916, a Tennessee circus elephant named Mary murdered her handler by crushing his head on his second day of the job. The circus owner then decided to publicly execute the 6,000-pound elephant by hanging her from a crane. After she was killed in front of a crowd of 2,500 men, women, and children, an autopsy revealed that she had a severely infected tooth that was likely the cause of her murderous rage. In 1990, rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry bought a restaurant in Missouri that didn't go very well for him. Shortly after opening, he was sued by several women who claimed he installed a video camera in the ladies' bathroom. Berry opted for a class action settlement with 59 women that cost him over $1.2 million. He claimed he set up the camera to catch a worker he suspected was stealing from his restaurant. But when police raided his home, they found several videotapes of women using the bathroom, and at least one of them was a minor. During the SARS outbreak in 2004, a Taiwanese woman made a bold attempt to protect herself from the virus. She bathed in a tub filled with 40% alcohol, hoping this would kill any of the potential germs on her body. She laid down in the fluid at 11 p.m. and was discovered dead by her family the next morning. An autopsy revealed that her blood alcohol level was 1.35%, meaning she absorbed a significant amount of alcohol through her skin. Lead singer of the Ramones, Joey Ramone, was born with a parasitic twin growing out of his back that was later removed through surgery. Joey was also diagnosed with OCD, schizophrenia, and Marfan syndrome, resulting in his frail health and striking physique. On the day of his assassination, at least 9 of JFK's Secret Service agents were recovering from an all-night bender that ended at 5 a.m. Their hangovers combined with sleep deprivation may have played a crucial role in the agents' inabilities to respond after the first shot. When 13-year-old Noah Crooks called 911 after murdering his mother, he told the operator, "I tried to grape her. I tried to grape her, but I couldn't do it." When 1930s musician Ross Colombo was accidentally shot and killed by his best friend, his siblings went to great lengths to hide the news from his mother, who suffered from a serious heart condition. They wrote fake letters to her and played records to simulate his radio show. This continued on for a decade until she passed away in 1944. According to a 2014 investigation, the car that Paul Walker died in had tires that were 9 years old. This likely contributed to Paul's racer friend losing control while driving around a corner at 93 miles per hour. It's a tragic example of why you should always change your tires after 6 years, no matter how much they've been used. Roughly 200 people die on cruise ships each year, especially on those that carry a lot of seniors. So most ships have a small morgue on board prepared to store up to 10 bodies. In 2002, 13-year-old hockey fan Brittany Cecil was sitting in the stands of a Blue Jackets game when a deflected puck struck her in the temple, fracturing her skull. She died just 2 days before her birthday and remains the only fan fatality in NHL history. In November of 2021, zipline instructor Joaquin Romero fell to his death after sacrificing himself to save a customer. He had to let go of the zipline because he knew it would be too heavy to hold both he and his client, so he decided that he would be the one to die. Mark Wahlberg was addicted to cocaine by the age of 13 and had committed at least 20 criminal offenses by the time he turned 21. In 1988, he was arrested for the unprovoked racist attack of two Vietnamese Americans and left one of the victims blind. Marky Mark was initially charged with attempted murder, but only ended up serving 45 days in prison since he was only 16. Here's a video of professional violinist Dagmar Turner playing her instrument while doctors removed a tumor from her brain. They asked her to play the violin during the surgery to ensure that her musical abilities weren't damaged by the delicate procedure. In 2017, an American man consumed a ghost pepper in an eating contest and had to drink 6 glasses of water to cool off. He then vomited so many times that he tore a hole in his esophagus and was rushed to the emergency room where doctors found his left lung had nearly collapsed. He spent 23 days in the hospital and was sent home with a gastric tube. Morbid Facts, Part 316. In 1991, a decomposing woman was found hanging from a shower in a New Mexico motel room. Despite an image of her being found in the room, she and the man in the photo still remain unidentified to this day. Her first name is believed to be Becca, only thanks to an anonymous tip given to police in 2021. The animal that causes the most deaths in the US annually is deer. This is due to them blindly running into roadways, resulting in an estimated 200 deaths per year. The runner-up is bees, wasps, and hornets, accounting for around 60 deaths annually. Tennessee man James Washington was always the prime suspect of a 1995 murder, but there was never sufficient evidence to charge him. That was until 2012 when he was having a heart attack and confessed to the murder since he believed he was on his deathbed. But he ended up recovering and was convicted based on this confession, which he later tried to take back. In 1935, Grace McDaniels became a circus freak show star known as the Mule-Faced Woman and was paid $175 per week. Her severe facial deformity was caused by a cancerous lip tumor that ended up taking her life in 1958. In the 12th century Catholic Church, innocence was judged by dunking the suspect's hand in a pot of boiling water. If God had not healed the wound within 3 days, the suspect was found guilty of the crime. In November of 2004, Peter Porco was struck in the head 16 times with an axe while he was asleep in his New York home. But he miraculously woke up the next morning, made breakfast and coffee for himself, and finally fell dead while picking up his newspaper. He had been completely unaware of his battered state and the pools of blood all around him. After Star Wars The Phantom Menace was released in 1999, Jar Jar Binks quickly became the most hated character in the franchise. The backlash was so devastating for Ahmed Best, the actor who played him, that he nearly took his own life. The first chainsaw was invented by 2 Scottish doctors in the year 1780. It was originally used to help open up the pelvis during childbirth. In 1958 North Carolina, a white girl told her parents that she kissed 2 black boys aged 9 and 7 on the cheeks. The girl's father then arranged a mob to go to the boys' homes where they threatened to lynch them and their parents. Soon enough, police showed up where they proceeded to arrest and severely beat the young boys. Charged with rape, they were placed in jail for 6 days without being allowed any contact with their parents. They were detained for nearly 4 months before finally being pardoned by the governor. It's infamously known as the kissing case of 1958. In 2007, Navy SEAL Mike Day was shot 27 times by 4 members of Al-Qaeda before being knocked out by a grenade. Not only did he survive, but Mike even ended up killing all 4 of the militants and walked away on his own after regaining consciousness. Jeremiah Clarke was a British composer who couldn't decide whether to take his own life by drowning or hanging himself, so he flipped a coin. The coin landed on its edge in the mud, so he went home and shot himself instead. Squeezing someone's testicles very tightly can have roughly the same effect as using an EpiPen, but I wouldn't suggest doing this because it could also kill them. Your body is the weakest from 3 to 4 a.m., making this the time when most people die in their sleep. Dutchman Dirk Willems was a religious prisoner who escaped his execution in 1569. When the guard chasing him fell through the ice in a nearby river, Willems turned around to save him. He was then recaptured and burned at the stake. For most of his life, former jock Jason Padgett believed that math was stupid and pointless. But that all changed in 2002 when he was badly beaten outside of a karaoke bar, resulting in a severe concussion. The very next day, he suddenly woke up and had miraculously become a math genius. Thanks to an extremely rare condition called acquired savant syndrome, Jason could now see the world in complex geometric shapes and fractals. Here's a 1923 photo of Russian leader Vladimir Lenin, by which point he had suffered 3 strokes and was completely mute. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. Many houses that people say are haunted have been found to contain high levels of carbon monoxide or other poisons that can cause hallucinations. This may explain why haunted houses are usually older homes, which are more likely to contain old and defective appliances. In May of 2020, UConn student Peter Manfredonia was having issues with his motorcycle. When 2 elderly gentlemen approached to help him, Peter pulled out a samurai sword and murdered one man while seriously injuring the other. He then circled around them multiple times with his bike before stealing another man's pickup truck and fleeing to his hometown. That's when he murdered his childhood friend and kidnapped the victim's girlfriend before driving south. Once he reached New Jersey, he fled the car alone and started walking on foot. Manfredonia's actions quickly sparked a massive manhunt that spanned multiple states and garnered national attention. However, it became increasingly difficult to locate the killer since this was during the peak of the pandemic, allowing him to easily conceal his face with a mask. After a week-long search, Peter was finally apprehended in Maryland. He was later diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses that caused him to suddenly snap. He received a 55-year prison sentence for his crimes and then apparently gained 200 pounds while in prison. When Theo Von was born in 1980, his dad Roland was 70 years old. Theo says he was always afraid to develop a relationship with Roland because he knew his dad would die when he was at a young age. His father ended up dying in an accidental shooting accident when Theo was 16 years old. British man Andrew Haig was sentenced to life in prison earlier this year after beating his 50-year-old neighbor to death with a bag of Pokemon cards. The two had gotten into an argument after Haig's neighbor accused him of being a pedophile. In 2012, Texas nurse Kimberly Sains was sentenced to life in prison after killing 5 of her patients by injecting bleach into their dialysis lines. Here are some of the distress calls that were painted onto houses during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Many refused to evacuate their homes because they weren't allowed to bring any pets into sheltering areas. The Category 5 hurricane ended up taking the lives of around 1,400 people and 500,000 pets. According to his former doctor, Michael Jackson's father had him chemically castrated as a young boy. He reportedly did this so that Michael would maintain his high-pitched singing voice into adulthood. The skin of certain fish species can be grafted onto severe burns and diabetic wounds. The material recruits the body's own cells and is eventually converted into living tissue. Located in Paris, this is the tomb of legendary scientist Marie Curie. It's lined with an inch thick of lead since her remains are still radioactive to this day. A Nile crocodile named Gustave has killed as many as 300 people in Burundi over the last 50 years. He's evaded dozens of capture and murder attempts as he can be identified by the 3 bullet scars on his body. The 2,000-pound monster croc is already nearly 20 feet long and is said to be still growing to this day. In February of 2013, Canadian tourist Elisa Lam went missing while staying at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Weeks after her disappearance, police released footage of her last sighting as taken by an elevator surveillance cam. In the video, Elisa can be seen looking outside the elevator and jumping back in, almost like she was trying to hide from somebody. She then proceeds to make incredibly strange hand gestures as if she's trying to feel something that isn't there. Soon enough, guests at the hotel began to complain about low water pressure in their rooms. Some even claimed to management that the water was black and gave off a strange smell. Upon investigating, authorities finally found Elisa's body floating in one of the hotel's water tanks 19 days after she first disappeared. Her death was ultimately ruled an accident, with bipolar disorder being a significant factor. In the case that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were left stranded on the moon, NASA planned on cutting off communication with them. They didn't want to record how the men chose to die, leaving them to either run out of oxygen or take their own lives with no further earthly contact. FDNY Ladder 3 was one of the first units to show up at the World Trade Center on 9/11. Its crew of 11 men sadly perished in the collapse of the North Tower, and now their truck is on display in the 9/11 Museum. In April of 2015, 28-year-old Shayna Sims gained access to a funeral home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She pretended to be a makeup artist to access the body of Tabitha Lynch. Apparently, Shayna resented Lynch and suspected that her husband had been having an affair with her. So as payback, Sims decided to mutilate Lynch's body, cutting up her face and removing multiple organs and chunks of her hair. Court sentenced her to 16 years in prison for unlawfully removing a body part from a corpse. In 2011, Chicago man Robert Lyons bludgeoned his mother with a champagne bottle before relentlessly stabbing her and pouring chemicals all over her body. He did this all because she refused to buy him skybox tickets for an upcoming Avril Lavigne concert. Robert was 39 years old at the time. This was the last photo taken of resistance leader Chiang Bin-Hua just moments before she was executed by bayonet. She led a Chinese guerrilla movement against the Japanese during the invasion of her country before she was captured in 1938. While in captivity, the 24-year-old was brutally tortured and gang raped by several guards, but died with a defiant smile on her face. In 2022, 70-year-old Maya Murma was collecting water in India when an elephant suddenly trampled her. She was quickly rushed to the hospital, but ended up dying from her catastrophic injuries. When family members gathered for her funeral, the same elephant appeared, threw Murmu's body into the air, and trampled it again. In 1987, police responded to Illinois father Russell Dardine's home after he failed to report to work. There they found the dead bodies of his pregnant wife Ruby and their son, who were both victims of a brutal beating. Ruby was beaten so badly that she prematurely went into labor, and even the newborn baby was beaten to death as well. Initially, Keith was the most obvious suspect until his body was found shot dead in a nearby field with his genitals mutilated. Serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells later confessed to the murders but was never formally charged, so the case remains cold. In 1980, John Favera, the neighbor of mafia boss John Gotti, accidentally ran over and killed the mobster's 12-year-old son Frank. Although it was ruled an accident, Favera went missing that same year and was never seen nor heard from again. Former mobster Charles Carneglia later claimed that Favera was abducted, tortured, and slowly dismembered with a chainsaw while he was still alive. His remains were then stuffed inside a barrel filled with concrete and dumped in the ocean. In 2019, the wife of Tampa Bay Rays prospect Blake Bivens was tragically shot and killed by her 18-year-old brother. Their newborn baby and the woman's mother were also victims of the random murder spree, which Bivens found out about from a headline he saw on Facebook. The picture later posted, "2 days ago my heart was turned to ash. My life as I know it is destroyed." Canadian serial killer nurse Elizabeth Wetlaufer told her pastor that she murdered 4 elderly patients by injecting them with insulin, and the pastor kept his promise to not turn her in. Afterwards, she would go on to murder at least 2 more patients before confessing to police. In 2021, 20-year-old Alex Kearns ended his life after thinking he lost $730,000 while trading options on Robinhood. He apparently saw the negative balance in his account and didn't know where to turn. The day after his tragic death, Robinhood sent Alex an email stating that the trade had been resolved and he didn't actually owe any money. After saying he was a murder victim's friend while being interviewed by a local news station, this was the moment when Stephen McDaniel found out on live TV that the body of the woman 2014 and is now serving out a life sentence. Last January, California man Dharmesh Patel was charged with attempting to murder his family by driving their Tesla off a cliff. But the entire family ended up surviving the 250-foot fall due to the near-perfect safety rating of Tesla cars. 26-year-old Bella Kilmartin has a rare condition that sends her body to sleep when she experiences strong emotions. She once almost drowned in a pool after laughing at a joke caused her to pass out. The euthanasia coaster is a concept for a steel roller coaster designed to kill its passengers. It was created by Lithuanian artist Julijonas Urbanas, who says the goal of his concept is to take lives with elegance and euphoria. The 7 loops put the body under so much stress that the brain is starved of oxygen, since the heart will struggle to pump blood against the tremendous G-force. It's meant to be a fun way to die.